All right, so today I want to talk about a poll from Gallup, and it's from August 5th, so it is kind of old, but it is very relevant in times like today. And I actually just came across it, so that's why I wanted to make a video about it. So anyway, it's titled "Black Americans Want Police to Retain Local Presence," and if we go down, scroll down here, we have the numbers broken down by race, and they separate it between preference for amount of time police spend in your area, and they have it broken down by more time, same amount of time, or less time. For blacks, it is 20% want more, 61 want the same, and 19 want less. For white, it's 20 want more, or sorry, 17 want more, 71 want the same amount, 12 want less. Um, as far as less goes, it's actually Asians that want less the most, and it's Asians who want more the least, right? So that's actually kind of surprising there. But if you look at adults as a whole, if you go just general adults, it's 19% want more, 67 want about the same, and 14 want less. So what is the take home point from this is, number one, the BLM narrative is a complete lie, right? Like, it's a complete lie. That's only 19% of blacks want less police presence in their communities, and only 14% of adults as a whole, right? So and this is another reason why these sports leagues, or why the ratings are going down so far, is that they're pandering to an ideology that, only 14% of people agree with, right? And only 19% of blacks, right? Like, they're not even getting the majority of blacks, right? So that's the big problem. And this is the thing too, is that because the small percentage of people that do want this, this is the problem, is that these people are very vocal, right? Like, they're very vocal. And because of that, they appear like they're a larger percent of the population than they actually appear to be, right? And this isn't even including the whole defund the police, because this is just 19% of blacks and 14% of adults want less, right? Like, this isn't defund or abolish. There's a pretty significant portion of this minority that wants that or sorry there is a percentage of this of that group that wants to defund and abolish the police, right? So this is the problem. Like, this is the problem, that pandering to this group of people, you're pandering to an insane minority of people, like an insane minority of people. And this is the problem, that it's a complete lie. Like, it's a complete lie that if the police genuinely were so racist, then why is this number so low? Like, why is it so low? Right? Like, it doesn't make any sense. It really doesn't make any sense. Um, and not to mention too, you look at the if you look at the races of people that want more police, blacks are more likely to want more police than whites, and Hispanics are also more likely, right? So the traditional minorities that people think of face the most racism are the ones that want more, right? So that this whole idea of racism, like, there's no evidence to back it up. Like, there's literally no evidence to back it up. Number one, there's no evidence to back up the idea that blacks are disproportionately targeted by police. When you adjust for the likelihood to commit crime, the disparity goes completely away. And another reasons why, like I've brought up before, that that there's no racism, is that if there was, they wouldn't simply bring up, oh, blacks are X% of the population, and they're whatever, 5, 10, whatever, however more likely they are to be in prison. They're more likely to be in prison than their percent of the population, therefore racism. That's not an argument, because that's like me saying that men are 90% of the prison population, therefore sexism, right? Like, no one accepts that as an excuse, for claiming that the justice system is sexist against men, which it is, but that's besides the point. Um, no one accepts that, because everybody knows that men are more likely to commit crime. So the only way that you would prove sexism, or in this case racism, is to be like, hey, blacks are, yeah, they're 13% of the population, but they commit 25% of the crime, but they're 40% of the prison population. That would prove racism, right? Because the percent of the population couldn't be any more meaningless. Like it's completely meaningless, because the stat that actually matters is what is the likelihood to commit crimes, right? Because um, young men are also disproportionately likely to be in prison, but everybody knows that young men are a lot more likely to commit crime. So the only way that you would prove if there was a bias against young men is to figure out, okay, what percentage of crimes do those young men commit? And if the percent of the population in prison is higher than that, then you would prove, bias, racism, sexism, whatever you're getting at. And because the people that want to act like blacks are discriminated against because of their race, because they never bring up those studies, it's safe to say that those studies don't exist. And if there was racism, those studies would exist and they would be talking about them, right? So again, that's why I say racism exists to some degree. I've said a million times, I'll never deny that racism doesn't exist to some degree, but it's infinitely times less, or not as bad as what a lot of these people would have you think. And not to mention, too, the only ways where legal discrimination exists these days is legal discrimination against usually whites and Asians, and legal discrimination against men, right? So if you want to bring up the areas that it is legal to discriminate these days, it's not against blacks, right? Like if anything, the discrimination that exists favors blacks, right? I mean, Justin Trudeau just came out the other day and said, "Yeah, we're giving hundreds of millions of dollars to black entrepreneurs." Like, imagine if Trump came out and said, "Yeah, we're giving hundreds of millions of dollars to white entrepreneurs and white entrepreneurs only," right? Like, he would be called a vicious racist, and rightfully so to a degree. But when you do it the other way around, nobody cares. Now, again, they'll make the whole racism argument, but they've never proven racism to begin with. And I have proven areas where there, like I say, there is legal ways nowadays that people discriminate against whites, right? Like there is plenty of ways where it is perfectly accepted by society to discriminate against whites and Asians, right? But nobody accepts discrimination against blacks, right? So that is the big difference there. So anyway, I wanted to bring this up because a lot of people just don't know this kind of stuff, and this is the thing too, that there is a silent majority, and I think there is a large silent majority when it comes to this topic, because um, the kind of people that are the most vocal in this situation is the people that want less, right? Like these are the people the mainstream media puts up. These are the people that BLM props up. Um, and the people that defend the police too, they're very vocal as well. But the people that are like, hey guys, the BLM is overreacting here. Those are the people that are the ones that are afraid to speak up, because um, they know that the majority of people agree with them, right? So they're not concerned about, or they're not overly concerned. They should be somewhat concerned about radical change, but coming to society. But on the other hand, they don't want to be called racist, right? So that's why the majority of people refuse to speak up when it comes to this kind of stuff. And people usually are only comfortable speaking up when they know the people they're talking with won't, call them racist or judge them, right? And the only people that don't do that are the people that are actually, kind of awake when it comes to this kind of stuff and kind of recognize BLM for what it is. The idea of BLM, yeah, it's a good idea. Like, Black lives obviously matter. The problem is that the minute you go any steps further than that, you immediately realize that anybody with half a brain wants to distance themselves from the movement. Number one, because they're founded and they're run by communists, and they openly admit that, many of them. Number two, they think that rioting and looting is okay. They think that targeting innocent victims is okay. Again, I don't care what your how just you think your cause is. The minute you literally think that becoming what you claim to be against is okay, again, I could care less about what your worldview is. And it's the same thing when it comes to BLM. The minute that these people justify rioting and looting, which most of them do, most of these left wing politicians do justify it. Let's be honest about that. Um, the minute that they do that kind of stuff, I could care less about how just their cause is. I don't care if they're telling you it, yeah, it'll save a million people this in a year even, right? Like I don't care, because if your idea is so good, then you don't need to be violent about it, right? Like the only reason that violence needs to exist in society is if you were aggressed upon, right? Like you know, self-defense is okay, right? Like self-defense is okay, but offensive, attacking people for no reason, again, is not okay. Again, it doesn't matter how just you think your cause is. So anyway, to sum up the whole video, yeah, the vast majority of people do not agree with Black Lives Matter, including Black Americans, right? So um, tell people about that too, because this is a very common thing that you hear. A lot of people, they think that you're crazy and you're in some fringe minority because you disagree with BLM, but no, it's actually the exact opposite, right? Like it's the exact opposite. So anyway, if you liked the video, make sure you hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. Make sure you follow me on Twitter, on BitChute, and on Parler. All those links are in the description, so you can find them all there.